Your podcast.
5 Live Boxing.
Welcome to 5 Live Boxing. Now, I know that every single weekend I tell you, it's been an extraordinary, a remarkable weekend. Well, this really has been a truly extraordinary and remarkable weekend. We had a world title fight involving Sonny Edwards on Friday night, a world title fight, a unique one involving Tasha Jonas on Saturday night, and at the same time, over in Las Vegas, we had Denzel Bentley, British middleweight champion from Battersea, in a world title fight. This is the golden age. This is the golden age. It is the golden age. We hear from Natasha Jonas, and I'll talk about the other fights. I'm Steve Bunce, and this is 5 Live Boxing. And when I look at big weekends, I always like to have someone with me who's experienced. I don't mean just experienced it because he or she sat at home with their feet up and a pipe watching a fight. No, I'm talking about really experienced it. Well, the only person that's been on this journey with me this particular weekend is Olympian, former Commonwealth Games champion, former European champion, former world champion, and a man who's been up and down the M1 with me that we're close to getting a high-vis jacket. If there's any roadworks anywhere in the country, this man and I will find it after a fight. We were together at York Hall on Friday night. Then it was the M1 or the M4 or the M6. I have no idea. And then we were together again last night. Well, I'll say last night. We got together, I guess, just after midnight. Anyway, that man is, of course, Richie Woodall. First of all, Richie, let me just explain to people. Richie and I did the Denzel Bentley fight through the night. We weren't in Las Vegas. That's to be continued elsewhere with management. We were in a studio. We went on air at 2:45. We came off air at 6 o'clock. I got to bed at about 8:30. It's now about midday. What time did you get to bed?
I got to bed about 9:30. But when he actually dropped you off, Steve, and then he was a lovely fella, the driver, but he just wanted a conversation with me then, and I was absolutely, started talking. I went, mate, I says, please, I just want to go to sleep. And then he was quiet. But yeah,
because in all fairness, you had snored through most of the roadworks on the M1 last night. I was applauding you. I filmed most of it. I've stuck it on social media. Here's Richie Woodall celebrating Denzel Bentley's near win. No, Richie, we've had some nights, haven't we? On the road
we have indeed, mate. We've had kids throwing bricks at the car at 4 o'clock in the morning.
We've had kids throwing bricks at the car at 4 o'clock in the morning. We've gone to get on the M40 and there's been a crash. And we've ended up 4.5 hours to get from places that are an hour. Yeah. Anyway, you don't want to hear about our journeys. You want to hear about what was an extraordinary, and I mean a truly extraordinary weekend of fights. I've mentioned Denzel Bentley there. We'll do it in detail a bit later on. But just quickly, Denzel Bentley travels to America, massive underdog, against the guy, Janik Beck, Alan Canuli, who everybody's talking about as the next best thing. They're getting his throne ready. Bob Arum says he's going to be the future of not just the middleweight division, but maybe of boxing going forward. I know it was only his 13th fight, and I know Denzel lost, don't get me wrong. But I tell you what, Rich, it told us a little bit about Denzel in defeat, and it told us an awful lot about Alan Canuli in victory.
Absolutely, Denzel in defeat. I was really proud of Denzel Bentley because he surprised me again. He surprised me a couple of times, actually, Denzel Bentley has. But last night he really did because at one point before the fight, I thought he could be totally out of his depth here. But
going away in 4 or 5 rounds.
Absolutely, but
that's what he was hired for.
Was I wrong? I didn't think he started well.
No.
But we'll go into that in a bit more detail, Steve, at some point. But overall, I thought he really should be proud of himself. I think the country should be proud. The boxing fraternity should be proud of him because he put in one hell of a performance. He lost the fight, but he was in it right to the very end. And the longer the fight went, the better he got.
Yeah, and if you're one of those people that's really cynical and says, Buncey, Richie, stop praising the kid who lost the world title fight, we'll explain why as we go on with this pod, why we're praising him, why he's worthy of every bit of praise, and why we learn more about him in defeat than we've done in any of his victories. Now, before we talk about Tasha Jonas and hear from Tasha, I want to take you back to Friday night in Sheffield. You and I were ringside at York Hall with a couple of other fights. David Adelaide was there. Nick Ball was there, moving closer to some either a big fight. It was a perfectly good night, but. In Sheffield on Friday night, Sonny Edwards, under the radar. Let's not mince our words with Sonny. He's a chalk and cheese kind of guy. He's a Marmite type of fighter. I'm a massive fan. He defended his IBF flyweight title for the third time this year. 3 fights since January the 1st. 3 defences. And he made a dangerous fighter, Felix Alvarado, look... Well, he made him look average because he did what Sonny did. I know he divides people, but that's worthy of some recognition, Rich, isn't it?
He divides people because some people don't really appreciate how skillful he is, Steve. He makes the opponents miss. He gets caught with a few silly shots, so occasionally he gets a little bit complacent. And sometimes, it's as if it gets a little bit too easy for Sonny. He's just doing it in his...
He told me that. He told me that. He said, I don't mind getting hit.
There you go.
It spices up the fight.
Exactly, and he gets a little bit complacent. It gets a little bit too easy for him, and he takes more risks, and those risks means he takes a few more shots than he should. But you have to, when you look at him and the way he boxes, his skill level is just off the scale. He does things, he can switch hit, he's a very reactive fighter. I really believe he's in that type of mould where he hasn't got one set of tactics. What he does is he just deals with what's in front of him and he'll react to how his opponent fights, however that may be. And he seems to be a boxer that can handle any style. Yes, he gets caught, but I like it. I think he's really skillful.
Let's stick with Sonny here for a minute. We'll get to Tasha in a second because you touched on something there, and the line you used was he seems to adjust or do what he wants. Now, was that evident when you had him as a baby, and I say baby in boxing terms, when he was part of the GB setup and on the fringes of the GB setup and was part of that system? Can you remember, was he a maverick then? Was he the kind of kid then that you knew no matter what you tried to drill into him, once the bell went, he was going to do what Sonny wanted to do?
Yes, I think... I remember him on GB for the brief period that he was on GB, and he seemed to be a boxer that did his own thing. And yes, you can try and tell him to tighten up his defence here and there, but Sonny's Sonny. And I think the pro game suits him much better because 3 rounds is a bit of a sprint, and he was getting caught with shots. Still got those fast reactions.
Strong kids were just nicking decisions.
Yeah, exactly. And then trying to teach Sonny to keep those hands up a little bit more. He just doesn't do that. He does his own thing. Longer the bout is now that if it's 10 and 12 rounds, then he's boxing to his style, and because the opponents are tiring, then he makes them. He exposes them. You
know what he said to me? We went up to interview him in his gym, and he said, "Bunce," he said, I wish the fights were just 36 solid minutes. I hate having a minute break. I hate it. I just want it to be 36. If let it be 60 minutes. I just want 60 minutes. He's thriving off of this distance because I've had a little look through, and there's 1 or 2 fighters like Eubank when Chris was super middleweight champion, and he had lots of fights, as you remember. It's a very small list of people. British boxers that have defended a world title
3 times. That's unbelievable.
So not won it and made 2 defences. They've not won 3 world title fights. That can sometimes happen. You switch weights. That have defended a world title 3 times in a year. Yeah. It's a tiny club,
When you
Rich.
said that, Steve, you had to think, didn't you? I had to think, and I couldn't think of a boxer that had defended 3 times. And as you say, you've just pulled one out, Chris Eubank. But I tell you what, there's not many more defended 3 times in 1 year. Like I said, I had to think, and I couldn't think of one.
Yeah. So Sonny's looking for big fights. What I'd like for Sonny, I know it's not the Christmas show yet, but I'd like Santa to deliver for him some exposure.
Yeah,
because he's likeable. He's got great ideas. You should hear some of his ideas on what should happen in and around boxers getting caught for using illegal substances, which we casually and incorrectly refer to sometimes as drug cheats. You should hear one of his plans for that. It's legendary. We're going to do a show on the drug business and boxing sometime soon, hopefully before Christmas. But Sonny's got some brilliant ideas. He's got some brilliant ideas on the whole boxing business, and he's a great fighter. Sonny Edwards, who may have gone under the radar, but he did something that very few British boxers have done. He defended his world title for the 3rd time this year. Now, when it comes to three world title fights in a year, Natasha Jonas, she's rewritten the book. She's done something that no British man has done in 1 year, since January the 1st. In fact, since February. She's managed to win not 1, not 2, but 3 world titles at super world to light middle. Rich, if it was a man that had done that, we'd be praising him and talking about him as an all-time great British fighter. She's just done it casually. And yet 6 or 7 years ago, she retired from boxing to have a baby. Yeah. She's a remarkable story.
She's unbelievable, and she's a lovely girl as well, is Tasha Jonas. But she can fight. You know what, Steve? It doesn't surprise me what she's achieved, because at GB, she was a class act. She really was. You know, in her fights with Katie Taylor in that Olympic in 2012, if you remember, it was probably one of the fights of the tournament when she fought Katie Taylor. But so she's always had
before
that
the medals
class
as well.
Yeah,
people forget.
Yeah, exactly. So she's always had that class and always had that skill. Does it surprise me what she's gone on to win? No, it hasn't. Certainly, it's some achievement that she's done this year. But you know, she's got the ability, and she's always had that ability, and it's just great that it's coming out now.
So on Saturday, on a Boxer show, which was on Sky and broadcast live and exclusive on 5 Live, Natasha was fighting a woman called Marie-Eve Dicker, from a French-Canadian. I went up to see her last week, and she was a good interview. She was fun. But what struck me about her, Rich, and it struck everybody I spoke to at this press conference last week, was everybody, whilst I was talking to them, were looking over at Dicker because she was enormous.
Big, yeah.
I mean, no, not just. I mean, you know, anyone can be 3 inches taller. Yeah. She wasn't just 3 inches taller. She had heels on. She was like 5 or 6 inches taller. But Rich, I'm going to stand up for emphasis. She dwarfed her, just like I'm standing over you now. Yeah. It was like that. And yet Tasha said to me, "No, I bumped into her. She didn't look that big." And I went, "Really, Rich? She was enormous." And then you watched her fight. It was close to a masterclass.
Yeah, absolutely.
One judge had it a shutout.
Yeah. Well, like I said, Steve, she's got the skill. She wasn't intimidated by the size. She boxed absolutely brilliantly. And when you have got the skill and you've got the ability, and then you just need the stage to perform, and she did, and she was up against a good opponent, but someone who didn't faze her. And for me, I thought she boxed quite comfortable. In terms of before the fight, if you looked at the two boxers and the size of her, you're thinking that Tasha Jonas is in for a really hard night here. But she just boxed her ears off, so yeah, fair play.
Because Dicker's only defeat was against Claressa Shields.
Claressa Shields.
And she lost that on a shutout. So one of the judges the other day had it a shutout. One had a couple of mercy rounds for her. But I mean, there's picking your shots and there's being faster than big guys. You and I were there, Richie. You know where I'm going, Nuremberg.
Yeah.
We were in Germany. David Haye against the Man Mountain. 7'2"
Valiev.
21 stone, Nikolai the Beast from the East, Valiev. And David Haye knew that if this guy hits him anywhere above the kneecaps repeatedly, he's going to crush. You could do that in a Soviet accent. I can't. I'll get sacked. I've been banned from doing Soviet accents. But he would get crushed if he did it. If you were to do it, he would. So David Haye knew, and he fought the entire 36 minutes. Rich, we were there, willing him on, ducking punches with him.
Yeah.
Literally, you and I lived. That's one of all the fights you and I have done ringside together over the last 20 odd years. We lived every second of that fight, didn't we?
Absolutely.
Because we knew if he could pull it off, it was going to be momentous, and he did pull it off. And this was a little bit like sometimes when I look at what some of the women are doing, it's like David v. not Goliath, but the Beast. Is like they're going in with these beast women, these enormous women.
But Steve, that's when the likes of Natasha Jonas, that they call on that experience they've had from GB, because they've boxed in so many tournaments all around the world. Bingo. They fought so many different styles. Then, it didn't faze her that she was in against a much bigger opponent. She chose the right tactics. She's got the ability to carry out those tactics and win the fight. So she's drawing on that experience from GB. And, like I said, she's a class act, Tash.
Anyway, in the seconds after victory on Saturday night in Manchester, Adi Adedoyan grabbed Natasha Jonas at ringside.
A great performance, but just how tough was it today?
It was very tough. I knew it was going to be tough. She's the number one in the division, and I had to perform my best and beyond to get the win. And it was, even though I won quite wide on the cards, every round was competitive, and I had to dig in, I had to stay sharp, and I had to be smart.
A lot was made of the fact that she's a natural super welter. How much did that play into this fight?
Yeah, physically she was very strong, but we'd done things in camp to combat that and trained with some of the best southpaws that we knew. It showed on the night. We won unanimously, and we've got the belts.
But for you, though, in terms of what you've achieved this year, 3 world titles in a row. When you started this year, if someone had told you that it would end that way, would you have believed them?
Never in a million years. This is by far been my best year in boxing ever. And to think at one stage it was almost over, and I nearly walked away. And 12 months on, and I'm here, like, a unified champion with 3 belts and a ring belt. I couldn't have asked for more, and it's all down to this man next to me. All the hard work. We've been through our ups and downs together, but we stayed in the gym, we stayed concentrated, and we got the job done.
Yeah, I was sat near Joe Gallagher. He was giving you lots of instructions. There are times in there where it looked like it was tricky. What was he telling you in between the rounds?
Just to stay smart, go back to some of the things that we'd worked on in camp, and to keep it tight. Sometimes I was coming a bit wide, and she was just, slipping and countering, and he was just saying, keep your hands up, and listen. In the end, I listened.
And as far as your career is concerned, in terms of a test, how tough was this? How does it compare?
I always knew once you got to this level, Joe warned me, once you're a champion, you get a target on your back and everybody wants to fight you, and everyone's going to be tough and everyone's going to be hard because they're all going to be at that world level. And that's the reason that we do what we do in camp, to make these fights on the night easier.
Your unified champion, Terry Harper, has the other belt. How interested are you in that fight? Joe Gallagher is shaking his head. What about you?
Yeah, listen, like I've said, I've had a tough year. I haven't had a break since last year. I'm going to go away. I'm going to have a good holiday with my little girl. And then me, Ben and Joe will go into 2023, discuss all the options and choose the best one for me.
There are a lot of options out there, apart from her, the likes of Clarissa Shields, people like that. I mean, it feels like you've got lots of opportunities coming up next year. 100%.
I had to win to keep them options open and keep them alive, and I did that, so I'm happy.
Tasha Jonas there, taking a leaf out of Katie Taylor's book, being non-committal about things, just being pleasant. But, Rich, I've got to tell you something. You and I could play a game here. A bit like that old Top Trumps game we used to play years ago, where you try and outdo me. So I'll go to you, I'll say a name to you, and you go, yeah, that's okay, but I've got Katie Taylor, and that brings 80,000 at Croke Park. There are 5 or 6 enormous fights.
Yeah,
for Tasha, and not just big fights, enormous fights. I'll start with Katie Taylor, would be their professional rematch at Croke Park, 80,000 next April. And Tasha can come down. She says she can do lightweight again. She just can't do super featherweight. That's one. Is that one? You tell me why that should be the fight she takes. Imagine you're selling it to her. Why should she fight Katie Taylor?
Why should she fight her? I think, if you know what, Steve, there's not many boxers in the world that can beat Katie Taylor. But I think Natasha Jonas is one of them. Yeah. And she's pushed her twice. Yeah. She's pushed her very close a couple of times as amateur and pro. I think that's a fight that she could build up to, and I think she's good enough, possibly, to beat Katie Taylor. I'll throw another one in the mix.
Go on, son.
Another British boxer who would be a cracking fight would be Chantel Cameron.
Chantel, who's now got all 4 undisputed lightweight belts.
Yeah.
That would be staggering.
They were on Team GB together. They know each other inside out, and that would be a fight that I would really like to see.
As we're playing Top Trumps, Rich, and I'm a bad loser, son, I'll throw one at you that's even bigger.
I know.
She's got the IBF, the WBO, and the WBC, and somewhere over there near Doncaster, there's Terry Harper, who's got a draw against her, who's got the other belt, the WBA light middleweight super welterweight belt. What about Terry Harper in an unbelievable domestic rematch?
Yeah, that would be another fantastic fight, and both would make a lot of money from it, and it's a fight that we would all like to see again. But I'll throw another one in the mix.
So keep going.
So if we're talking about undisputed champs, let's bring down Claressa Shields for middleweight.
Because she's been there before.
She's been there before. She'd come down. She'd come to this country again.
She wants to come to this country.
Because she's been here before against Savannah Marshall, so she would come. That fight, Natasha Jonas versus Claressa Shields, man, what's bigger than that?
Yeah, that's the one secretly that I think that Ben Shalom, the boxer boss man, that's the one he really wants. So they promoted that monumental event at the O2, Savannah Marshall against Claressa Shields. They promoted. They've got a bit of a relationship. I think that can be made because, listen, I was around Claressa when the fight fell through, when the Queen died, and then when it actually went ahead. And I can tell you, man, Claressa loved it. She loved the respect the women got. More than that, she loved the respect she got. You know, she hasn't fought in front of anything like the kind of crowd we got there, like 20,000. And there was so much love in the arena. And if people think I'm being soppy because I'm tired, I am tired, but I'm not being soppy. There was. It was a different feel to the arena. So I think Shields is a possible. I'll throw another one in there. Why not? Okay, I'll throw this one in. McCaskill, Jessica McCaskill, still holds the 4 welterweight belts, even though she lost at light welterweight. And I'll throw a really tricky one in.
Go on.
This is a really odd one. Michaela Mayer. Now, you might say, Bunsey, she's a super feather. No, her frame, I'm standing up again for emphasis, her frame would let her go up to 10-10 comfy. That's where Jonas is. And what's more, Michaela is a calculator. And her man, George Ruiz, great, sensible manager, they might think, you know what?
Yeah.
Tasha Jonas can't hurt us. So if we get 10, 12 pounds up, she can't hurt us. I'm big enough, fast enough, young enough and slick enough. I can beat her. Trust me. If it comes up Michaela Mayer, I should have had a bet on it. Yeah. I'm not advocating gambling.
Steve,
you appreciate that.
So what we're saying is there's 5 or 6
minimum
really, appealing fights to fight fans out there for Natasha Jonas that are all world title fights.
And what's mad, Rich? I had this conversation with her the day before I left for Rio back in 2016. You and I reunited there at ringside. Every night, you and I went out for the same thing: pizza and a couple of pale ales. And I spoke to her the day before I flew on the Wednesday, and she was on the floor because she'd calculated how many of the women she'd not just boxed, but she'd beaten. And it was something like 7. Oh, it was killing her. Oh, Rich. So when she came back 2 years later, it wasn't a shock to me. She had a baby in the meantime. Yeah, she's a great story, man.
She's a great story, great girl, and a great fighter.
She is that. Natasha Jonas. If you've missed her this year, make sure you catch her next year. She's going to be in some super fights. And you know what? I don't like to. It's maybe too lazy and too casual, but she's super mum. Of all the sports women we've got in this country, she's super mum. She's listen. Why not? Nothing wrong being called super mum. Great for endorsements. Hey.
Absolutely.
And Rich, we're talking here in the West Midlands, so I think it's only fair to mention Birmingham boxer Casey Benjamin, who lost his British light welterweight challenge to Dalton Smith on the undercard. Really pushed him. I mean, Dalton won, but Casey pushed him. And also Big Fraze, a man from Burton, the king of Burton, who we found out goes undercover sometimes on the terraces for another club. We're going around another time. He had his first big test after 3 or 4 easy wins where he hasn't broken a sweat. He fought Kamil Sokolowski, who you and I like and admire. Yeah. He didn't stop him, but he won every single round, and he put on social media, that's the test I needed. I'm delighted for him getting 6 good rounds.
Absolutely, and that's what he did need, Steve, to be quite honest, because Fraser, lots of experience, obviously, as an amateur, for all the best amateurs in the world. He's set up for the pro game now, but you've got to be tested over 6 and 8 rounds. And Kamil Sokolowski is the perfect opponent to push you.
Last of a breed. He's last of a breed.
You're not going to stop him. He's a hard man. But what I like about Sokolowski, Steve, is he's not only a hard man. He gives you a good test. He works you over. He's in it to win it. Yeah. He's not just in it to take a few shots.
And he had 8 weeks training camp. That's what Fraser was telling me last week.
And Fraser knows that he'll learn from them fights. Yeah. For Fraser to make a statement like that after the fight means that he's learned from it and he appreciates that that's what the type of fight that he's got to have if he's going to push on and be a champion.
So that's a good weekend, if you don't mind me saying so. Rich and I at York on Friday, and at the same time, Sonny Edwards is doing something that very few British boxers have done. And then the next night, Big Fraze has a real test, and we love Big Fraze. He's got an Olympic bronze medal. Dalton Smith, one of the guys that's going under the radars in British boxing, a class act. Yeah. And then Natasha Jonas doing what no British fighter, male or female, has ever done. Before we go to Las Vegas and we relive where we were just hours ago, you and I, to be perfectly honest with you, I want to take you to Cleveland. It's an odd place to go. Don King's obviously famous for being from Cleveland. In fact, he shot in self-defense one man there, and he served a sentence for killing another man there, which he was later acquitted of. So Don King certainly knows the streets in Cleveland. Don King, of course, being a friend of the show, so to speak. We had him on 2 pods earlier this year. No, and there was a bizarre main event on the Eddie Hearn show there, which was shown on DAZN, between Montana Love, who Eddie particularly likes and was moving towards things, and Steve Spark. Now, it was quite a bad-tempered brawl, and then I'm not quite even sure what round it was, but there's this bizarre move where Montana Love upends Steve Spark. Steve Spark goes up. I'm standing up next to him. Goes over, lands very acrobatically, lands. It's a bit uncomfortable. He doesn't fake or feign injury.
No, he didn't. No.
Stands up, shakes his shoulders, shrugs his shoulders, gets back in the ring ready to fight, and the referee disqualifies.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it.
Did it seem a bit harsh to you, Rich?
It did seem harsh on me. Listen, I think a point should have been deducted. He should have been,
and given him 3 minutes if he needs it.
But because he jumps back into the ring and literally goes to the ref, what are you doing, ref? Let's get back on with it. And by that time, then he's disqualified. I was really surprised. I thought it was just a case of, you deduct a point. It was a bit of a nasty affair. It was a bit of a brawl. He gets thrown out of the ring. But it's not as if he picked him up and threw him out. They're sort of wrestling.
They help each other a little bit. It's a strange
sort of wrestling
turnout.
on the ring, on the ropes, if anything. The momentum then takes him over the ropes. Yeah, there's a little bit of a push, but come on.
But it doesn't.
I think it would have been a point deducted. The thing is, Steve, this is the question. If he'd have fell and he'd have landed and he's sort of on the floor and he's flat out.
Landed on an old typewriter or something.
Exactly, and he literally can't get back into the ring, then I suppose he would have had to have been disqualified then. But the fact how he sort of got back into the ring straight away, then I think it should have been just a point deducted.
Yeah, so
That's my opinion.
if you've not seen that, I'm sure you better find it. And the reason why I mentioned it, it was entertaining, it was interesting, but I can tell you now, the next time we speak to Eddie Hearn, he will be going on about Montana Love being ousted and ejected from the ring. I wish that, in fact, they don't have this service in boxing. It'd be really nice on calls like that if we could go to the video referee, like our own sort of VAR, and go to some guy who's in a high box and say, no way is that disqualification.
If the kid has gone out the ring and like we just said, he sprawled out onto the floor, then the referee's got there's a bit of time there, isn't there, where he's thinking, and then he's got to disqualify him. But he's got straight back in. And, it's a bit uncomfortable.
And it looks fresh when he gets back in.
He's fresh and he's saying to the referee, come on, let's get on with what you're doing.
Well, you know what? Rematch, as they say in the trade. Rematch.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, Richie, we got to, as we said at the top of the show, we are going to talk about Denzel Bentley and his brilliant night. And again, I'm not making no apologies for saying it was a brilliant night when a man lost in the world title fight at the Palms in Las Vegas, just slightly off the strip and over the other side of the highway. Perfectly nice hotel. In fact, it's parts of it are really lovely. Now, it seems like you and I were up watching this, and you were commentating, and I was in the studio with a couple of people. Just seems like a couple of hours ago. It's still fresh in my mind. He did lose the decision. He lost the decision. 2 judges had it 8 rounds to 4. 1 judge had it 10 rounds to 2 in favour of Janet Beck, Alim Kanuli. I thought the 10-2 was very wide. I had no problem with the 8-4. Could have been 7-5. Denzel lost. Let's get this right.
I had 7-4 and 1 even.
I remember the one you scored even, and I think I gave that to Denzel, so that would make it. But, so let's get this right. Neither you or I are saying that Denzel deserved to win. But what we're saying, I think, I'm not putting words in your mouth, is that we saw things last night from the current British champion, a man who a year ago was being stopped on his feet by Felix Cash. We saw things there that I think are really encouraging going forward. I thought it was a terrific fight, great scrap, and the last round was legend.
If you start that round from round 4, then
fight.
It's an absolute really close fight. For me, I just thought he got it wrong early, but having said that, he's in against a really accomplished world champion who's very, very skilled.
You mean he started slow, Rich?
He started a little bit too slow, and I think it took him 3 or 4 rounds to actually, he was trying to work him out because he was too far away, Steve. Typical situation against a tall southpaw who occasionally sat back, increased the distance between himself and his opponent, and Denzel Bentley just could not work out how to get to him. He needed to quicken his feet up a little bit and take a few more risks early on.
So maybe by the 3rd round, take risks instead of taking a risk from the 5th round. But I'll throw something back at you, and it's a straightforward counter, if you don't mind me saying so. As much as we're saying that Bentley could have done a little bit more in rounds 2, 3 and 4 before he started to get going in 5 and make it really competitive fight, how about this? Alim Kanuli, World Amateur Championship, Astana 2013. Quality Olympian, quality fighter. Been in with all the best Soviet blocks and Cuban fighters over the last 12, 15 years. And only a boy at 28. So he's not one of those 37-year-old Kazakhs. He didn't have any idea how to break down Denzel.
No, he didn't.
So,
no.
you understand me? He
Yeah.
didn't. So how about that? So we're saying what Denzel should have done. If I'm a massive Alan Cannulli fan, and I also want to be slightly critical, I'm saying, why wasn't he getting a bit closer? Why wasn't he looking for body shots?
Yeah.
Why wasn't he looking like Golovkin would have done?
Yes.
The other great Kazakh, Rich. I'll throw that to you.
Yeah, that is a good point, Steve. But one thing you have to remember, and I've said this many times before, a fighter who hasn't gone 12 rounds before will always have that in the back of his mind. And I think probably Denzel just missed the opportunity there. If he'd have pushed him a little bit more earlier on, Alan Cannulli may have tired earlier in the fight. Yeah. And then, because the longer
he did tire, didn't he?
Yeah, he tired. There was a couple of periods in the fight where he looked really, really tired. Yeah. He raised his game in that probably last round, but you know, because you're into the last round. But up to 8, 9, 10, then there's a period there where, Bentley really pushed him because he tired. And like I said before, when you haven't done the 12 rounds, it's in the back of your mind to hold a little bit back because you think, am I going to be fit enough to do these 12? Alan Cannulli was, because in that 12th round, then he just upped the pace a little bit. But I think Denzel just missed an opportunity, an opening there.
And watching the interviews afterwards, it looked to me like he knew it as well. Yeah. Because he was gutted, he was sick. You saw he was on the floor. He's been interviewed by Rob Armstrong, did a great job for BT out there. And he was on the floor. Yeah. And part of that wasn't just that I've lost and I've got all my friends and family and loved ones here. Part of that was... But he wouldn't say, because he's got he's got a lot of pride. I could have won that, couldn't I?
That's why I think he's a future champ, world champ.
I do too, I agree.
I really believe that he could go on and win a world title, Denzel Bentley. And because you know what impressed me about him, Steve, after? He was disappointed.
Oh, he was gutted.
He wasn't,
on the floor.
I've gone 12 rounds and I put in a good performance and everyone expected me to get beat. He was still disappointed. And that's the sign of a good fighter and a fighter that will win something.
Yeah. And you know what I like, and I've done maybe 300 or 400 overnight fights, back in my Box Nation and Satanta days, and I love an overnight fight. And the best overnight fights are the one as it's coming to dawn outside, where they're coming to the last round, and you end up getting up. Now, I was up during that last round because Alan Cannulli has a great first 2 minutes, and then he comes rallying back, Denzel, and we get a 60-second slugfest to finish it. Yeah. Hamza Shiraz was in the gym with us, the unbeaten middleweight, who's been sparring with Alan Cannulli, done 100 rounds with him. Carl Frampton was there, and don't need to mention his credentials, they're deep. And all three of us were up, literally throwing shots. Come on, and we were chanting the peacock chant. Come on, my Dens. Come on, my Dens.
You know what,
Bias,
Steve?
I don't care.
That last round was the story of the whole fight.
Bingo.
In that Denzel started that last round quite slow and got caught.
Then wins the end of it.
And then wins probably the last minute and coming on and everyone's saying, I wish there was another minute on this round. Yeah. So fair play to him. I think it told him a lot about himself. The way he could, he'll be so much more confident now. He's gone in there with a world-class opponent who no one wants to fight. Tall southpaw at middleweight.
Who can bang.
Who's a good fighter. No one wants to fight
most of his
him.
opponents.
No one wants to box him. He's gone in there, more than held his own. So, yes, for the future, I think that bodes well for him.
I'd like him to be out soon in London and trade on that because you can win in defeat, Rich, and he won in defeat.
Absolutely,
I'm delighted he got through that first. The first minute of the last round was a bit tricky, because he got hurt and he got caught.
The great 1-2s from Alan Cannulli. He really put it together, didn't he? He's a sharp kid, the Kazakh boxer.
I tell you what, that was you talk about that last round summing up. That fight, I think that last round maybe summed up the weekend. There were some highs and some lows and some swing lows and some outrageous moments. That was a great weekend of fights.
We finished on a high.
I just wish there were 2 Steve Bunces, which of course some people might just think that's just House of Horrors.
We
but
don't
hey,
need 2 of you, mate, I'll tell you.
We missed Halloween, now there's 2 Bunces. Oh, yeah. You know what, Richard, you and I have been together on some great weekends. And before we go, we've got to mention this. We've been there, London Olympics, Rio Olympics. We've been there for some unbelievable nights. We were there for Vladimir Klitschko against Joshua. We were there for Fury. Great fights. But I missed this on Saturday night, and I know you did too, and I wish I had. I would have sold my granny for it, and I really mean that. Ricky Hatton coming out to Blue Moon on a walking frame, accompanied by 2 nurses in front of a capacity crowd at his personal home tears streaming down his face. And we're not lovers of these exhibitions, but we'll acknowledge it, against Marco Antonio Barrera. I'd like to have been there. I'd like to have had a fast car to get me up there. Just for the walk. I don't want to see the 8 rounds. Yeah. Just for the walk and the noise. For the noise, Rich.
Yeah, listen, he's a national hero, isn't he? And he is up there, and the crowds have come out again to support him, and he wanted to hear that roar for that one last time. I hope it is the last time, because I'm not a big fan of these exhibitions either. But nevertheless, he's got himself in great shape. He's got his focus back, and it's been good for him to actually have a goal again. And to come back against another legend. There was 2 legends in there, so all credit to them. And just to hear that crowd again, that was special, because as you say, we've been with him over in Vegas when there's been 20,000 supporters out there. It was fantastic to hear that one last time.
I think he might end up having another one somehow, somewhere. But as long as it's a pure exhibition.
He looks in great nick. Looks in great condition.
He was about 12 pounds above his fighting weight. But I interviewed him last week at the Love Factory in Manchester, and I've got to tell you, he looks like a different person. It's absolutely and
he's got a new lease of life.
I think he's going to keep the weight, Rich. I mean, he might put on a couple of stone maybe, but he ain't going up 5 stone again, 4 stone. He ain't going up to 17, 18 stone. I'm telling you, 16 stone. I hope so,
because you remember Ricky Hatton in some great fights, and he's been great for British boxing, and the crowd love him. And to see him in the condition he was against Marco Antonio Barrera, that was really encouraging. And we just hope that he can just stay focused like that, and that'd be really great to see, Steve.
Ricky, you did it for your fans, you did it for your family, you did it for yourself. Thanks very much, son. You've been brilliant. Before we go, it wouldn't be the 5 Live boxing show if we didn't give you an update on the heavyweights. Okay, so officially, I wish I could do my newsreader voice here, but I'd probably get in trouble for doing a newsreader voice. No news from Anthony Joshua. Tyson Fury still fighting Del Boy Chisora at Tottenham on December the 3rd, and the IBF have ordered Alexander Usyk to fight Filip Hrgović. Okay, they're saying it's going to happen, and if it doesn't happen, this fight's going to happen, and Usyk could be stripped. Now, of course, this runs counter to what we're hearing, where Usyk, in theory, and his man Igis Klimas have done a deal to fight Tyson Fury next year. Basically, you don't even have to speak, Rich. You can go and put your head down. The soap opera in the heavyweight division continues. This weekend wasn't about the soap opera in the heavyweight division. It was about amazing stuff. Richie Woodall, you have been amazing as normal. What a weekend of boxing we had. Sonny Edwards, one of the best fighters, certainly one of the most underrated ever British world champions. Denzel Bentley showing guts, bravery, but also how smart he is, losing in a world title fight in Las Vegas, which is, a standard sentence, although his name was up in lights. And Tasha Jonas doing what no man has managed, winning 3 world titles at the same weight in 3 separate fights in 1 year. What a weekend of boxing. And I'll let you know a secret. Before Christmas, we've got another 4 of them. What a business. I've been Steve Bunce, this has been 5 Live Boxing.
Let's get ready to rumble! 5 Live Boxing.